We're living in a very unusual timeline, my friends. Stock Car Racing League, NASCAR, has banned the Confederate flag at all events and properties, period. While the President of the United States on the same day, a rich guy raised in New York City, is loudly defending Confederate named military bases in the United States, says he will not change the names of those bases and is being called the Confederacy's second president by a Republican group. So, especially for our viewers outside the US, but also for people in the United States, just as a sort of refresher, the Confederate flag was the flag of the Confederacy in the American Civil War. You had the Union versus the Confederacy. Some called it North versus South. The Confederacy fighting for slavery. Sometimes they say they were fighting for states' rights, to which I always like to say states' rights to continue having legal slavery, whereas the Union was fighting to abolish slavery. Of course, the Union won and slavery was abolished, and the effects of slavery, of course, took much longer than just that war to actually deal with. But there are parts of this country where Confederate flags are sometimes also called the rebel flag. They are revered or fetishized in some way. Even in the sort of hill towns in Western Massachusetts where I went, near where I went to high school, you would have places just 10 or 15 miles out of Northampton, Massachusetts, which is a super liberal little city, that, the guys thought it was cool to drive into the vocational school with a pickup truck that bore a Confederate flag on the back. And there are those who I believe rightly see it as a symbol of hatred and oppression. And there are others who say it is a symbol of history and heritage. But in any case, it is widely now in popular culture being eliminated. And I quite frankly, I believe that it should be. I mean, would we apply, look at the losers in other conflicts, losers that are fortunately losers because they wanted horrible things. Like, could we say that displaying Nazi flags just because they lost is just it's history? Like there was a German military and it's just like, okay, guys, it's an extreme example, but I find it to be in very, very poor taste. Now, this gets us to NASCAR. NASCAR in the United States is not known for being made up of the most progressive people. Now, I'm not saying NASCAR fans are all racists, but it's certainly a sport that leans more conservative in terms of its fan base. And it's one of the few places where Donald Trump can actually get himself a crowd that cheers instead of a crowd that boos. And it is a place where, unfortunately, Confederate flags are certainly more common than in other sports. You don't tend to see Confederate flags at NBA games. You don't tend to see Confederate flags at Major League Soccer matches. And as far as I know, they wouldn't even be allowed in, to be perfectly frank. But you do see them at NASCAR races until now. NASCAR has now banned the display of the Confederate flag at all events and properties. And notably, NASCAR also removed its rule that says racing team members have to stand for the national anthem. And we've seen a number of sports leagues now say, if you don't want to stand, you actually don't have to stand. So every indication here is NASCAR sees what's happening nationally since the killing of George Floyd. Bubba Wallace, one of their racers, has been very supportive. Drivers, I think they're called. Has been, shows what I know, has been very supportive of the protests, and they are making a decision that there is going to be no more Confederate stuff at their races. Now, is it because everybody involved morally believes that there shouldn't be Confederate flags? I don't know. Certainly, they've made the business decision that there will be no more Confederate flags there. Not everybody's happy. NASCAR Truck Series driver Ray Ciccarelli wrote on his Facebook page he's going to quit after this season because Confederate flags have been banned. Have fun, buddy. Don't let the door hit you on the way out. And then here's the real amazing contrast. Look at the last 24 hours in NASCAR, okay? And compare that to the last 24 hours of Trump. Trump putting out a statement and tweeting that he will not change the names of Confederacy-themed military bases, saying, quote, "It has been suggested that we should rename as many as 10 of our legendary military bases, such as Fort Bragg in North Carolina, Fort Hood in Texas, Fort Benning in Georgia. These monumental and very powerful bases have become part of a great American heritage, and a history of winning victory and freedom. The United States of America trained and deployed our heroes on these hallowed grounds and won 2 world wars. Therefore, my administration will not even consider the renaming of these magnificent and fabled military installations. Our history as the greatest nation in the world will not be tampered with. Respect our military. Now, what's funny about respect our military is that, remember, the Union won the Civil War, meaning that the military should be respected. The military that should be respected is the military that fought against the Confederacy, because we won. The Union won. So when you name the forts after the side that lost, that was killing the precursor to our current military, the Confederacy that fought for slavery, doesn't really make a lot of sense, because you've named forts after people who were against our military. They did not respect our military. So listen, this is not the biggest issue. I don't really care what the forts are called, although it doesn't make a lot of sense to me that we name them after the losers who wanted to keep slaves. But who would have guessed, as Barack Obama was leaving office, that during the subsequent presidential term, NASCAR would take the more progressive stance of banning the Confederate flag, compared to the president who defends Confederacy era statues, figures, heroes, whatever they like to call them. Republican group, the Lincoln Project, which is a Republican group that opposes Trump, has now come out and said Trump is the Confederacy's second president. This is a Republican group which put out a statement where they said, "We never imagined when we named our initiative to defeat the re-election of Trump, the Lincoln Project, that the president would go as far as honoring the Confederate generals who fought against the United States to preserve slavery and uphold white supremacy. For all intents and purposes, Trump today became the Confederacy's second president. We cannot allow this." And then they go on to say, "We need help from Republicans to remove Donald Trump in November." Strange times, but I believe the decision by NASCAR is the correct one, whatever their reasons for doing it. And it's probably a mix of understanding the way society is going, combined with the fact that it's probably a bad PR move to continue having these flags displayed. They did ultimately come to the right decision.